It was a bright Saturday morning in Portland, Oregon, and the farmer's market on Main Street was crowded with weekend shoppers. Michael Turner, 52 years old, walked between the stalls with a paper bag of fresh apples in one hand and his phone in the other. His daughter-in-law had asked him to pick up flowers for Sunday dinner, and he was scanning the booths for the right bouquet. Michael had lived a quiet life for the past 2 decades. He ran a small carpentry workshop on the edge of town, known for handmade furniture and honest prices. His son Jacob, now 26, had recently gotten married and moved 20 minutes away. To most people, Michael seemed content, but those who knew him well understood that a part of him had never healed. 20 years earlier, his wife, Sarah, had been on a ferry traveling along the coast when a violent storm struck. The vessel went down. Many passengers were rescued. Sarah was not among them. Her name was placed on the list of those lost at sea. There was a memorial service, a headstone with no grave beneath it. A 6-year-old boy who kept asking when Mom was coming home. Michael had raised Jacob alone. He never remarried. He told himself it was because he was busy. The truth was simpler. He had never stopped loving her. That Saturday morning, as Michael reached for a bouquet of white lilies, Sarah's favorite, he heard a laugh. Not just any laugh. A laugh he hadn't heard in 20 years. His hand stopped in midair. Slowly he turned. Across the market, near a stall selling homemade jam, stood a woman in her early 50s. Silver streaks ran through her dark hair. She was speaking with the vendor, smiling. Michael's heart pounded. It couldn't be. He had imagined this moment 1,000 times in the first years after the accident, seeing her in crowds, hearing her voice in busy stores. Grief did that to people. His counselor had explained it long ago. But this was different. The way she tilted her head, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the small scar above her left eyebrow from a childhood bicycle accident she had once told him about on their 3rd date, and then he noticed the young woman standing beside her. She looked about 20, tall, dark hair, and her eyes. Michael knew those eyes. He saw them every morning in the mirror, a rare shade of gray-green that ran in his family. His father had them. Jacob had them, and so did this stranger. The paper bag slipped from his hand. Apples rolled across the pavement. The sound made the older woman turn. Their eyes met. For a moment, the entire market seemed to go silent. The woman's smile faded. Her face turned pale. Her lips formed a single word. He couldn't hear from that distance, but he didn't need to. It was his name. Michael crossed the space between them without remembering how his legs moved. "Sarah?" His voice cracked. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "Michael, You're alive," he whispered. "How are you?" "Alive?" The young woman beside her looked back and forth between them, confused. "Mom, who is this?" "Mom?" The word hit Michael like a wave. Sarah reached for the young woman's hand. "Emma, sweetheart, I need you to give us a minute. Please." They sat down at a small table near the coffee stand at the edge of the market. Emma waited a short distance away, watching cautiously, and Sarah began to explain. The night of the storm, she had been thrown into the water when the ferry capsized. She remembered nothing after that, not the rescue, not the days that followed. She had been pulled from the ocean miles down, the coast by a fishing crew from a small Canadian town. She had no identification. Her injuries were serious, and when she finally woke in a rural hospital, she couldn't remember her own name. The doctors called it traumatic amnesia. "There was no record of who I was," Sarah said quietly. "The ferry passenger list had errors. I had bought my ticket in cash at the dock. As far as anyone knew, I was no one." She spent months recovering. A kind older couple in the town took her in. She took a new name, the one the nurses had been using. She started over, because there was nothing to go back to, or so she believed. "Fragments came back over the years," she continued, her voice unsteady. "A house with a blue door, the smell of sawdust, a little boy's laugh. But they were like pieces of a dream. I didn't know if they were memories or imagination." Michael listened, gripping the edge of the table. "3 years ago," Sarah said, "I was in a car accident. Nothing serious. But afterward, memories started returning. Real ones, names, faces, yours." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "By then, 20 years had passed, Michael. I found articles about the ferry. I found the memorial page. I saw that you had grieved. that you had rebuilt your life. I saw a photo of Jacob at his high school graduation." Her voice broke. "He looked so happy." "You both did. So why didn't you come?" Michael asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was afraid," she admitted. "Afraid that showing up after 20 years would shatter everything you had rebuilt. Afraid you had moved on. Afraid I had no right to walk back into a life that had already healed without me." She looked over at Emma. "And there was something else. Something I didn't even know when the ferry went down." Michael followed her gaze. "I was pregnant," Sarah said softly. 6 weeks. I didn't know yet. I had planned to take a test that weekend after the trip. The world seemed to tilt. "Emma was born the following spring in that little town," Sarah continued. "I didn't know who her father was. I didn't know who I was. I only knew that I loved her the moment I saw her eyes." She smiled through tears. Those eyes that never matched mine. Those eyes I couldn't explain. Michael looked at the young woman standing near the flower stall. 20 years old, his daughter. A daughter who had grown up without knowing he existed, just as he had lived, without knowing she existed. When my memories returned and I understood whose eyes she had, Sarah said, "I told her everything I knew. She's the reason we're here, Michael. We moved to Portland 8 months ago," Emma insisted. "She said," Sarah's voice trembled, "she said she wanted to live in the city where her father lived, even if we never found the courage to knock on your door." Michael stood up slowly. He walked toward Emma. The young woman straightened, nervous, her hands clasped tightly. "Emma," he said gently. "Yes, sir?" He smiled at the politeness. Sarah had raised her well. "My name is Michael Turner," he said. "And I think I'm your father." Emma's eyes, his eyes, filled with tears. "I know," she whispered. "I've known for 3 years. I've walked past your workshop maybe 100 times. I bought a birdhouse from you last spring. You gave me a discount because it was raining." Michael remembered. The quiet girl with the umbrella, the way she had lingered at the door, looking back at him. "That was you?" he breathed. She nodded. "I just wanted to hear your voice." Michael did the only thing a father could do. He opened his arms, and after a heartbeat of hesitation, his daughter stepped into them for the first time in her life. That evening, Michael made a phone call. "Jacob," he said, his voice steadier than he expected, "I need you to come over. There are 2 people you need to meet. And son, you might want to sit down when you get here." The reunion wasn't simple. Real life never is. Jacob needed time. He had grieved his mother as a child, and seeing her alive brought back emotions he had buried deep. There were long conversations, difficult questions, family counseling sessions where all 4 of them sat in a small office and slowly untangled 20 years of loss. But there were also new memories. Sunday dinners that now needed a bigger table. Emma and Jacob discovering they shared the same laugh. The same stubbornness, the same terrible sense of direction. Sarah and Michael taking slow walks in the evening, not rushing anything, just learning who they had become. One night, months later, Michael stood in his workshop, sanding the edge of a new dining table. It was the largest one he had ever built. Emma appeared in the doorway. "Mom says dinner's ready?" "Mom says." 2 words that had once been impossible. Michael set down his tools and looked at the table. 6 chairs now, not 2. "Coming," he said. At dinner, Jacob raised his glass of lemonade. "To second chances," he said. Sarah smiled. Emma grinned. Michael felt his eyes sting. "To second chances," they echoed. 20 years earlier, the ocean had taken everything from Michael Turner. But life, in its strange and patient way, had given it back. Not the way it was, but the way it was meant to be. Because sometimes what's lost isn't gone. Sometimes it's just finding its way home. And sometimes on an ordinary Saturday morning at a farmer's market, between apples and white lilies, 20 years of grief can turn into the first day of something new. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe for more stories about family, hope, and the moments that change everything.